I know today I look a little rough. I think most of my life I look pretty rough. So just a heads up, I'm having chest pain this morning. I've had a second shot of nitro, so we'll see how that goes. If I were to go to the hospital, the health science center, which is right near here, I would wait probably 7 to 8 hours to see a doctor who would tell me I have indigestion, even though I've had abnormal EKGs and have been followed through St. Boniface Hospital's cardiology department. That's kind of what it's like because I look young and healthy. I constantly experience discrimination. Just going to remove this. Just so you have a clearer view. So today I want to talk about some of the medical people that I had in my life at the time of the accident. The person who really helped me out a lot at the initial with those initial injuries that were so severe was a massage therapist called John Bain, who was absolutely terrific. He was more than a massage therapist. He had really specialized in some areas, and he was really able to help me with the cranial stuff. So I saw him for quite a while, but because Ontario discriminates against all massage therapists, insurance, I think, does in general, none of his care would be covered unless I could convince a chiropractor to help him, to literally sponsor his participation in my healthcare. So, of course, no one's going to do that. That was my experience. That also happened with a woman named Jessica. I've forgotten her last name, but she did cranial sacral work with me for quite a long time. And was also a very, very good massage therapist. My longtime physio, who had treated me for many minor injuries from sports or fender benders or whatever, because basically every car I drove in Ottawa, someone eventually hit it because they're really bad drivers. And none of my care was ever paid for, with the exception of when I was hit driving a car with U.S. plates. That was my husband's car. And American Insurance just steps right in and takes care of you. That we don't have that, especially not in Ontario. Bill was my physio for a long time. I had saw him after the first time in 2001, I believe, because I'd gotten an injury playing soccer. In the days where I was crazy fit, he treated me for migraines on a regular basis because my migraines were so bad. So over the years, I saw him many times. Unfortunately, after the accident, acupuncture was too intense, and it seemed to make my symptoms worse in the short term, so I couldn't even tolerate that. And he was a one-man operation, and he told me outright that the insurance companies harassed care providers to an extent which he couldn't even participate, because the requirement for information, for forms, for a massive time allocation just to deal with insurance was not possible for him, given that he had a substantial client load. I did see another physio named Lorraine Hamblin, who was also refusing at any cost to deal with insurance companies, and even went to the extent to write her notes in such an illegible fashion that they couldn't even be used for my case. So this is what you encounter. So when I requested support from Cooperators Insurance, they gave me a list of physios and chiropractors they worked with. And of course, every one of those people or organizations is on their payroll. So how objective are they going to be when their bread and butter income comes from that insurance company? They are not going to ever at any cost risk those substantial contracts by saying what's really going on with you. So that's kind of where you're left. No care provided. So who did Cooperators have me see? Well, my demand performances included Dr. Chow, Raphael Chow in Toronto. So not only did I have to see these doctors in Ottawa, when I moved home to Winnipeg, they forced me to fly all the way to Toronto to see other doctors who were also corrupt and on their payroll, and refused to recognize any care providers in Manitoba, because if you don't know it now, Ontario hates the West. Literally, I bought a brand new car in Manitoba, drove it over the Ontario border, and had to have it re-safety because they do not play nice with anybody but Quebec. Everyone else just is told to screw off. So that discrimination is huge. And coming home to Manitoba and getting care here, it was an additional barrier to getting anyone to really look at my injuries. Raphael Chow gave me an initial first assessment that I thought was fairly accurate, other than the bizarre stuff I mentioned before about him saying my clunking hip was due to my ballet dancing, which I'm not a ballet dancer, never told anybody I was. So just made that up to create a backstory for an accident injury that was 100% the result of the accident. But this backstory, which also included claiming I fell down, which started with Amanda Carteret, which was never happened, never told it to anybody, never did fall down. So the immediate, when there's an injury they can't attribute to anything other than your accident, they create the backstory, the false narrative, bullshit all around that, just to sort of diminish A, the extent of the injury, and B, to attribute it to something outside of the accident. This is what the insurance companies do. Raphael Chow assessed me as unable to work in the major injury category, arbitrarily created by Ontario insurers, which really has no merit. Their injury categories, they make no sense. They're just a way for them not to pay, let's put it that way. So his assessment, though, implied that my injuries should be paid to my injury treatment should be paid to a fairly substantial extent. The minor guideline says you get like $3,000, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things when you're paying $125 a week to a physio and additional money to, I didn't use a chiropractor for a long time because my soft injuries were so bad that chiropractic treatments were not only unbearable, but they weren't sustainable because the soft tissue was pulling everything in other directions, and they didn't last. So I saved myself that pain. My chiropractor, though, in Ottawa, who was fantastic, Patrick Falloon, saw him over the years. He actually said to me, you are like the kind of person that is always active, always working on your body, always trying to be fit. You suffer minor injuries like the rest of athletes. You get them fixed, you get treatment, and off you go again. And he really knew me as a person. I did want him involved in my case, but the harassment by the insurance company led him to say, no, I can't do it. I got 5 calls in one day. I cannot deal with these people. And again, he was an independent person. So the burden of the insurance company was not possible. So I was sent to see Dr. Carrie Lawson, and Dr. Chow hinged his report on saying, let's see what the neuropsych guy says. Of course, Carrie Lawson is the criminal, lost his credentials. His report is still being circulated to this day. And based on a really nonsensical set of tests, because he left many things out, I found out later on, wrote basically at the end of the day said, nah, she didn't have an accident, all in her head. So that all in my head thing influenced everybody. In addition to the false report by Dr. Smith, who claimed that the accident didn't worsen my carpal tunnel. And once he did that, he did that in order to cover his ass because he failed to send me for surgery, and then actually created a false report saying that he had seen me when he hadn't, claiming he had done a second injection when he hadn't, claiming I was seeing the surgeon the next month when I'd already had the surgery. So he dug a hole and just continued to lie to cover his ass. And he's retired now, but the College of Physician, I can't say it, sorry. I do struggle with my words some days. Anyway, the college did approach him and had a conversation with him about his lies. So at least that gave me some closure on that issue. So Carrie Lawson, super asshole, now not even a doctor, gets to influence my case along with lying Dr. Smith, also no longer a practicing physician. Dr. Chow rewrites his report and rewrites parts of it that have nothing to do with Lawson's report. So I really question as to whether he did write it. Was it written by Amanda Carteret? All of a sudden, the narrative of falling down appearing in his report, which didn't appear in the first report. Why did he change the whole thing? Why were parts of that report changed? I don't know. Let's ask Cooperators Insurance that question, right? Anyway, so he decided suddenly that, oh, yes, she's in the minor category. Oh, yes, she's not that injured. Oh, yes, it's all in her mind. So again, things go down the can, and I approached him. Very nice man. I told him about Carrie Lawson being a defunct doctor, and he said he wanted to amend his report, but that request had to come from Cooperators Insurance, which of course would never request that. I also saw a Dr. Weber, who was a sports doctor, who was very concerned about my labral tears, which weren't operated on because, and this writing appears on my website, ottawasucks.org, the actual letter, which says that I couldn't have surgery because the waiting list was too long and they would not even add me to it. Thank you very much, Ontario, for your stellar health care. So my hip issue was of a concern by Dr. Weber. He did note that I would have long-term problems, which I'm having, and likely a hip replacement in my future because of this accident, and for no other reason than this accident. But Dr. Weber's reports were withheld by Amanda Carteret at Cooperators, and she went even so far as to remove page 2 of his initial report. So she shared the first and last page, but not the middle. And she also withheld the second report. The only reason I found this out was because I noticed the missing page 2, brought it to her attention probably on 17 occasions, and she refused to respond. So I went directly to Dr. Weber and got his second report, which I'd never seen, and the missing page 2. Thanks, Amanda, for all your help, you lying little piece of junk. Anyway, fast forward, I'm forced to fly to Toronto to see yet another psychiatrist in, I do mix my time periods up. I believe it was a year ago, maybe 2. So I, at my own cost, have to fly to Toronto to see Dr. Albert Chang. The appointment was supposed to be for an hour, so I did miss my return flight. I was there for 6 hours. This little bastard took bits and pieces from Dr. Smith, former Dr. Smith, and former Dr. Lawson to concoct this crazy report. He lied about all my injuries. He just lied. He manipulated anything he could. He cut sentences in half. And I let him know about Dr. Lawson being defunct. And he didn't care. He was getting paid by Cooperators and got paid handsomely. And guess what? Those costs come back to me. Those costs are deducted from my allocation for my medical treatment. So not only do they hire the worst bastard possible, who's on their payroll, who's not objective, who has no interest in your injuries. His role is to create the false narrative, to lie about what's going on, to misuse information, to substantiate the lie, and to get paid handsomely by your own insurance company, and then to bill it back to you. Can you imagine? So this is what we're dealing with. I'm going to stop there because that got a little long in the tooth. I did notify Albert Chang about what happened. He does not care, but his reports and all the falsehoods within them and all the details within them that I challenged are on my website at ottawasucks.org. Go there and you can see for yourself the truth. Thank you for listening. Sorry about my low energy today. Thanks.